The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
They let us play with all our toys. They let us think that we're big boys. They let us make the louder noise, but we ain't rule the world. They let us think we're Superman.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you. I will stop till I reach the top just to be there with you.
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
Dad, you gotta stop haunting the ghost. It's scaring them.
All right, seriously, put down the pointy sticks.
Oh, the deeper I fall.
Okay! Game on! Game on! Game on!
The password is...
All right.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
I try to act so cool, but you know I'm just a fool for you. For you.
Seriously, Dave? Really? Aren't you a little old for a tinfoil hat?
Hello, Toby. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Please take your seat above all. There will be a prepare for takeoff. Start. 2, 1. Boost ignition and liftoff.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride on this Thursday, May 18th, Friday, May 19th. If you're on the East Coast, hope you had a great day, evening, and night. We are live right here in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North, 7 days a week. We welcome everyone in listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live on the United Public Radio Network. York on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also live on Spaced Out Radio, Spreaker, KTLK, The Fringe FM in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio. Remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Rocking us in and out of every show is Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Yes, Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. If you're a social media junkie like I am, give us a follow on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. How about giving our Facebook page a like? Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download our shows from iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player FM, and Stitcher. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. And if you head over to patreon.com for as low as $1 a month, you can become a patron of SOR. Now, if you want to take part in this show, you got to do me a favor. I need you to sign into one of those chat rooms that we use, either on our website by clicking Listen Live, on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, or maybe you're one of the lucky ones like Gail or Joe with the pointy sticks, and you're a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. Or you could be like Deb, Les, Dennis, Paranormal Family, and be on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I'll get to your questions and comments in there as well. Now, if you head to our website for $5 a month, you can become a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club. And as of tonight, as of right now, we do have official Spaced Out Radio swag on our website. We have a brand new Spaced Out Radio store. Click on the button on our website, pick up a t-shirt, a poster, or an SOR sticker. Pretty soon we're going to be adding Carl the Alien candles. You can get it all right there. And if you get a poster, I'll even sign it for you. Just make sure you let me know who it is. And I want to sign it for you, make it personal. Hey, we have a great news section on our website called The Encounter Online, dealing with everything paranormal and strange, courtesy of our editors, Eric Markham and Everett Thiemer. You can check out my latest blog there as well. And if you've had an experience you can't explain, do me a favor, fill out an SOR Sightlines report. You know, there's a lot going on in the world today, and it just seems to get stranger and stranger by the day. And we're at a place where we need to talk about this stuff sometimes. So it's a good time to bring in one of our monthly feature guests, Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. Jamie is long time in the entertainment industry. He has a lot of contacts who have also worked in entertainment, politics. They know the real story of what is going on behind the scenes and behind the facade that most of us really know. Now, usually every show we take Jamie down a different path. Tonight is going to be no different. You know, as you've known, if you've listened to this show, Jamie has been very involved in the music industry over the last 20 years or so, and he lost one of his friends, Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, today. Committed suicide. We're going to get into that. We're also going to get into chemtrails, because there's a lot of talk about chemtrails going on. And even though this is a little bit strange on the topic, we're going to get into a little bit of the New World Order and how it's affecting the world right now. So we have a lot of topics that we are going to hit tonight with Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. Jamie, hard to believe it's been a month, but here we are again. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
You know what? I can honestly say, my friend, I was in Provincetown, Massachusetts last weekend for an amazing Paracon put on by Sam Beltrusis. It was the first annual event, and we got to be, you know, part of the scene there, and it was really good. But I tell you, man, today my jet lag hit me. It's like 3 days since I got home, and today I finally crashed at about 4:30, and I told my coworkers, I said, you know, I'm going home. I am so tired. And thank God I'm in management. You know what I'm saying? Thank God I'm in management where I have the ability just to get up and go home. But right. I'm tired. I'm tired is what it is. But that's okay. How you been?
Well, I've been all right. You know, working hard to get Rebel Planet News up and launch soon. So, you know, you got to jump hurdles with that kind of thing every day, of one sort of or another.
It is. You know, and putting a project together like that, it can't be, mishandled. And you're much like me, where you want to do things right the first time, because there's nothing worse than going back and saying, you know what, I did all that work, months and months of work, and I hate what I did. But rebelplanetnews.com is your website. You are currently building it. For the listeners, and since you were on, we have a plethora of new listeners tuning into this show on a nightly basis. Maybe give us an explanation on what Rebel Planet News is and how you came about.
Well, Rebel Planet News is going to be to begin with, at least, an online alternative news source. As we've discussed before, a lot of people are floating around that term fake news, which I find amusing. So we want to try to stay away from fake news. We want to try to be a real news source with accurate information that not only is legitimate, but probably stuff that you're not going to necessarily get on mainstream news, which I consider a lot of the times to be fake news themselves. I think that was my biggest inspiration for wanting to do the news site, was just that I feel like people aren't informed. And over the years, you have conversations with people, and you because I've written for years about geopolitics and world affairs and goings on, and I would have conversations with people, and it was amazing to me that you would share some information with someone, and they would go, "Oh my God, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about that." So I think there's a big gap between a lot of the important things that happened in the world and people's desire to be informed. So hopefully we can fill that gap for them.
You know what? I'm glad you're talking about that, because actually, believe it or not, my speech at the Provincetown Paracon was about paranormal media, the fringe media, the alternative media, and the mainstream, on how all of them seem to be dropping the ball these days on what is real and what is fake, really doing a disservice to the reader, the listener, or the viewer. Is there an opportunity, Jamie, in your opinion, with Rebel Planet News to try and bring it all together where people can trust what you're saying? And if so, since you're brand new, how do you gain that trust from your readership or your viewership on your website when you launch? I believe it's in the next month or two.
Yeah, hopefully if we're on target, it will be. That is a big challenge, gaining people's trust. Obviously, if you don't do that, you're going to be dead in the water right from the beginning. So obviously that's a big goal of ours, is to establish a base where people can trust us, and we become one of their go-tos for solid information. But at the same time, one of our objectives is to tackle subjects and stories that the mainstream is either afraid to handle, reluctant to handle, or in worst cases, I believe, they have other interest than to pursue some of these stories. And I think that, you take a big risk. Anytime you go outside the fringes to report on things or discuss things that aren't mainstream, you run the risk of people going, well, I don't know whether to believe that or not. So I think, we have a huge task in front of us to present information that can be checked and balanced and verified. And I think through that process, over time, people, can learn to trust what we bring them. I think the internet is a wild place. There's good and bad in that. There's a lot of alternative sources for information these days, and instead of over-regulating that, which I think that a lot of people have suggested that we do, I think that people should just train themselves to be more discriminate and better informed and think for themselves. And I think that in itself is the biggest objective for me personally, is to get more people involved in thinking for themselves, as opposed to getting their news and their politics and their information from standing in front of the TV for 5 minutes when they have their morning coffee and their way out the door, and they think that they've heard it from one of the major mainstream talking heads, so they feel themselves qualified and informed, when in fact they could be the farthest thing from that. So I'd like to see more people engaged, and besides just information with Rebel Planet News, I think one of the different things we want to do is the way that we present information, the style of writing, the different podcasts that we'll be doing in the future and things like that. I just want to make it interesting for people so that they're invested in information. I think that's one of the tragedies of our society, your country, my country, most of the Western world. I believe that we're just not informed. We think we are, but we're really not. And because we're not, we feel powerless. We feel like, well, whatever the news tells us, that's the truth, and we go on about our days. And I think we need to be more informed and more engaged, as far as I'm concerned.
You're very right. We're getting a little bit of humming coming out of your studio there, where you are. I don't know what's causing it. There, it seemed to disappear for a quick second. I don't know what you did there. There, it seems.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better, actually.
Yeah, I just moved the microphone over.
Okay. All right, so thank you for that. But the big thing that we are seeing when it comes to the mainstream news and everything, we can talk about, Jamie, we can talk about, fake news. We can talk about how they're taking us down different paths. But at what point does the viewer, the listener, and the reader have to take responsibility for giving these people ratings? Because I remember when I started in Vancouver, we considered ourselves, I worked at an all-news station, we considered ourselves to be a news outlet. Then about four months after I started there, we got a new news director who said, news is dead, infotainment is where it's at. Mm-hmm. And that's where all of a sudden we started giving a care about what was in the National Enquirer and smut mags like that. So the question that I have for you then is, how much responsibility is on the viewer, the reader, and the listener? Because in the end, they are the ones who are dictating ratings. Ratings mean money, because when you make money, that means you're selling advertisement. And when you're selling advertisement, that's because people are listening to that type of information. They're not listening for the news anymore. So it's no wonder that the mainstream has been able to manipulate what the public hears and what they don't.
Right. Well, I think that's a complicated answer, and here's why. Because, to use an analogy, I used to experiment with different guitar players when I was, first writing songs. I didn't know necessarily which direction I wanted to go to. There's all types of rock and roll, all kinds of different flavors. And I remember one of the guitar players that I played with was extremely talented. The guy was a virtuoso. He could play almost anything, just fluid fingers. And not as good as Bumblefoot, but really good. And we were having a conversation once, and something stuck out that he said that was really interesting to me. He said, he goes, we're spending an awful lot of time on this song. I think we'd worked on this song for like 4 days. And he said, at the end of the day, man, he goes, look at us. We're worn out over this song. It's just a rock and roll song. He said, why don't we just back off of it and come back? It was just a rock song. He goes, we're trying to give people steak and caviar here. He said, at the end of the day, man, everybody just wants pizza and hamburgers. That was a food analogy to the music analogy, but he was right. And a lot of times people just want the fast and the easy and the good time, and they want that in every facet of their life, including the news. But the complex part of that is who conditioned who. We have the corporate media, which obviously presents things in their own formulas, right? News segments, the commercials in between, the way they hire their talking heads, et cetera, et cetera. So the way they deliver things is certainly in a format which caters to an audience. And then, of course, you want to bring your audience to that. So it becomes this complex dance of what's the real engine behind it. If you strip away the media part of it and just have a conversation with someone over the news, over the water cooler at work about a current event, a lot of times when you engage people that way one-on-one, and you'll get a mixed bag. Either they're just completely not interested, not informed, or you'll discover, oh wow, you really have an interest in that. But so I think a lot of times the level of interest depends on the person, obviously, and the level of engagement. But if you have someone that's really hungry for knowledge and they have the potential to be more educated and learn more about what's going on in their world and participate in it and those sorts of things, I think the vehicles aren't there. But they feel a little bit helpless, because what I hear a lot of times, especially when you're talking about things that are going on in the world that I think that people should probably be more engaged in, what you hear a lot of the times is a sense of apathy, or they say, yeah, I heard about that, but I mean, what are we supposed to do about it? What do we do about it? And I think that government and the media and all these bureaucracies and institutions have become so refined and homogenized and so good at what they do, and separated from the people, from the public, that is the mindset of the average person, is that what can they do about anything? Even if they have information, what can they do? And so they're sort of trained and conditioned. And with each new generation, it gets worse and worse. There's a separation between the mechanics and the power of institutions and government and media and the average citizen. And I'm sure that the corporate media and the government loves that, because they can go on about their business without much fuss. And as long as the people are getting their hamburger, pizza, and trivia and their favorite TV show, life is good. So I've never felt good about that. I've always felt like that's a dangerous, slippery slope, and that kind of got us to where we are now. So the original question you asked me was, how much responsibility does the average listener or viewer have in that? I think we have to start by really seeking out knowledge, not just taking for granted what's presented to you. Once you just sit there and, this television figure who America love and trust told me this, so I should just take that at face value. I don't think you should ever take any reporter or talking head at face value. Check out some other channels, read some opposing views, do your own homework. Use your mind, get involved. Don't just listen to the news as if it were entertainment, because if you do, then they will give you the pizza and hamburger that satisfies your appetite, and they won't care. So you have to be responsible.
I would agree with that. And in my speech, one of the things I said was people have to stay vigilant. And if you study the mainstream news, and let's just take that for a moment, there is a big difference, and JB, I'm sure you'll agree on this, there is a big difference between what we see on a national level comparatively to what we see on a local level. You're going to get more of an honest newscast listening to your local stations than you are from a national broadcast that seems to have more national topics online where they can direct you pretty much any way you want to go, especially in the United States, where media outlets have actually gone and chosen political sides, going against the grain of everything that journalism stands for. Would you agree with that statement, that locally you're going to get healthier news than you would on a national level?
Absolutely I would. But I think we touched on this before, and I think I was reminded of it again this week when I was watching the local news for a few minutes. And one of the stories was someone had stolen one of the little plastic alligators that was on display in the middle of a median here in Vegas. And I thought, I don't really care about that little plastic alligator or the cat stuck in the tree. I know those are local stories. And yes, you will get more honest reporting, but on the national, the way they tackle the national stories, that's a whole different bag. So as far as if we're just talking about the quality and honesty of journalism, sure, I think that the local affiliates definitely have more of a freedom to beat the bushes and go out and seek out stories and talk to local politicians and things like that. And definitely you're going to hear more honest reporting on local stories. I believe that. But, everything's become so corporate now that even the local affiliates are owned by the major networks. So, when it comes to national news, I don't think it's much different. If the local Fox News affiliate is reporting on the national Fox News talking points, you're probably just going to get the same script. I think national news agencies are much, much more corporate, and I think that's where most all of your corruption comes from. There's a lot more at stake when it comes to the corporate angle of it all, which also is the engine that drives it all. But also, if you're talking about the politics of it, I think that it's that's where that's the big leagues. The national news agencies and the giants. Those are the big leagues, and that's where the corruption is going to take place. I don't think journalism itself is dead, and I agree with you that you will see that people who have a thirst to and a desire to get in the business of journalism and seek out the truth, and you'll find those guys at your local newspapers and your local television stations and local radio stations, and even some of them at the national level. But the national networks are that's the big leagues, man. I mean, Tim Allen this past week got a big dose of reality with all that. I'm sure you're familiar with that story and his show Last Man Standing. He appeared on the Jimmy Kimmel show a couple of months ago, and Tiffany and I actually watched that episode, and he was asked about his attending Donald Trump's inaugurational ball, and he was hesitant to say that he had, and then once he admitted that he had, he sort of acted like, I shouldn't have admitted that on TV, and he backpedaled a bit and kind of let the cat out of the bag. That he felt like, in his words, he felt like Hollywood reminded him of 1930s Germany, where you had to be careful what you said, or you'd pay a price for it. And lo and behold, 2 months later, ABC cancels his show, the second highest viewership this season of any television show on any network, and they canceled it. And clearly it was politics. The irony and the justice in that story is that just yesterday, 2 days after that, they found out, well, Fox owns that show anyway. Fox owns that show, so they're just going to move it over to their network and continue the show. So he sort of won that battle. But it does go to show that politics, seeps its way into every facet of entertainment, television, and all sorts of things. It's where the big league sharks play. So I'm like you, and I know you come from a journalistic background, and you're big on that sort of thing and keeping the integrity in it, and I agree with that. I just think that on the national level, man, there's a lot of work to do to turn that ship around.
It is something that is going to be a very difficult deed. I don't know if it's gone too far or if it hasn't, or people have just given up. But we always tell people, your voice means something, because it does. In the end, people think they've lost their voice. In reality, I don't think they have. There's still more of us than there are of them. And in the end, if you're listening, whether it's this show, whether it's Monday Night Football, whether it's Tim Allen's Last Man Standing, okay, you have a voice as to what's going on. And we look at what happened with Tim Allen and this whole conspiracy as to why ABC would let the number 2 rated show in America, which was in a crap time slot on a Friday night, which Thursday night used to be the big comedy night. If you remember back to Friends and Seinfeld, and how Ray Romano's show ever got there, I don't know, because he is the epitome of not funny, along with Bob Saget, in my opinion. But but the whole point is, on a Friday night stuck in a bad time slot, he was number 2 in the nation. You just don't cancel those shows. They are money makers. If they're paying Tim Allen $25 million a year to do this show, they're making at least $100 million profit on top of what they're paying out. That's the way. Absolutely. That's the way this works. You just don't throw away $100 million if you're in the media, because television is greedy, very, very greedy. Hollywood is greedy. They want every dime that you have, and they're not going to. That's right. They're not going to do that, and it just baffles me. It baffles me that it's getting to that point down south, man. It really does.
Oh, absolutely. But Tim Allen, and I agree with him. I agree with him 100%. There isn't a shred of doubt in my mind that was pure politics at the corporate level, what happened to him. Not a doubt in my mind. But he's not the first guy to suffer that kind of scrutiny over his brand of politics. Anybody that has a conservative view or anything other than the mainstream liberal Hollywood view, you got to tread lightly in some environments. Otherwise, you stand to pay a price for that. And I don't, that's something I don't support. People, I got into a political debate on social media today with a few people over some things, and I went round and round and round, and it's always amusing when they assume they know what your politics are. And I sometimes I'll toy with people like that, and I'll let them reveal all their cards, and I do that to expose their bias, because I think and you and I have talked about this before on the show, I think that personal bias is one of our, as individuals, is one of our weaknesses. I think that we get married to political opinions, political parties, labels, personal bias. And we do that to such a degree that we close even our own mind off to alternative thought. And it's okay to form an opinion. It's okay to feel conviction about something and passionate about something. But if you just take off in one direction, and we've all been guilty of this, but I learned a long time ago that if I just let my emotions and my passions just take off in one direction, without weighing them against alternative opinions and other points of view, I'm not really informed. And sometimes it comes back to bite me, or I'll regret it, or I'll change my mind. So I don't care where somebody stands on a particular issue, but I would prefer that they arrived at that position after some degree of due diligence and homework and balancing that out with other information. When somebody's just shrill and screaming and passionate, and they haven't informed themselves or considered the other person's point of view or position, that's a person that I really, can't really put a lot of stock into,
Let's move on to a different industry, because we're going to get more into the New World Order in hour number 3 with you tonight. Today, we find out the news that grunge rock legend Chris Cornell, age 52, was found dead in his hotel room, and it is believed that he died in Detroit by hanging himself in a suicide. He's lead singer of Soundgarden, Audioslave, Temple of the Dog. That Seattle grunge area has been hit so bad, whether it's with depression, whether it's with narcotics like heroin or cocaine. Where does this one stand with the passing of Chris Cornell?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know. And first of all, it's a tragedy. As far as, I woke up to that news this morning, was just shocked. Chris was just absolutely amazing. In my opinion, just one of the best voices ever in rock, best songwriters, complete, genuine musician, extremely talented, and a really nice guy. I had the pleasure to meet him a few times over the years and thank him for his music and tell him how big a fan I was. He's just amazing. So the news itself is it's tragic. As far as the scene goes, I talked to a few people today. One of my friends, Brian, is actually a very good friend of Chris's. And he told me that the family and himself, they couldn't see this coming. They didn't. It sort of came out of nowhere as far as they were concerned. And I talked to another person that recorded in the same studio as Soundgarden some years back, talked to him today, and he agreed, I can't obviously speak on Chris's behalf and his what he might have been going through. Couldn't even imagine. You never know what somebody's going through until you walk in their shoes. So, as far as your question about the scene in Seattle, yeah, I've always felt that way about that music scene. Some people were always really big fans of the whole Seattle music scene. It wasn't my flavor when it came about. I was knee deep in rock and roll and the Hairspray and the big shows and all that sort of thing at the time. And so when the Seattle scene first emerged back with, Soundgarden and Pearl Jam and some of those bands and Nirvana, to me, I wasn't a big fan. Obviously, they had millions and millions of fans, and I've grown in time, of course, to appreciate a lot of their stuff. But yeah, I always felt like just from an aesthetic point of view and just the overall mood of the Seattle scene, yeah, it was really dark. Everything was really dark, and a lot of the lyrics were very moody, and a lot of mention of suicide and things like that. But art does that. So you don't necessarily judge people or musicians by their story per se. But the scene did have that. And like I said, one of the guys I talked to today, he's a drummer, and he recorded in some of the same studios as some of those bands I just mentioned. And he told me, he goes, man, I went up there to join a band for a while and played, and he said Seattle just bummed me out. He said, just living there depressed me. He said, I don't know if it's something in the water or something in the air. So I don't know. It just seems to be sort of the climate around there that you know, that is the vibe. As far as Chris himself goes, I don't know what was going on in his life. I'm an outsider in that, like everybody else. I'm not close to his camp, so I couldn't speak on that per se. I do know that he's mentioned himself that he had struggles with drug abuse from a very early age and in and out of rehab many times. So hopefully those demons didn't come into play. I think the saddest part about it was being reminded today that he has 3 children, 11, 12, and 16, I believe. So that's going to be tough on them. So.
No, I fully see that. But I mean, it also all of a sudden makes you, in retrospect, think of, Lane Staley with Alice in Chains, dying of a heroin overdose because he couldn't handle his anxiety and depression. Kurt Cobain, who was very anxious and very depressed. Well, we all know what happened there, of his suicide in 1994 to join the 27 Club. We also know that Duff McKagan from Seattle, bassist for Guns N' Roses, he battled depression in the music scene as well, leaving home at 16, got into a very bad alcoholic and cocaine binge during his time in the original GNR before cleaning himself up and going to get a bunch of degrees in university. So it is there. It is an epidemic. It is a problem in rock and roll. We see how many people in music who are so talented who die by the needle of heroin. And it's sad that this depression is what brought out an entire genre, because these guys are dying at such a young age. Maybe we just know about it more because of social media, and we're tracking it more because of the speed of social media. But in the end, it's still nonetheless not as painful as knowing that this is happening on a daily basis, not only with musicians, but with regular people like you and I as well.
Yeah, it's tragic. I've never used drugs. That's not part of my story. So, on one level, I can't really relate to that. I've struggled with depression at different times in my life, and other people in my life have as well. So, I have some familiarity with that. But the drug thing is a struggle that I'm not really qualified to understand. I've had friends who have struggled with it before, and I think that, it must make whatever struggles you would normally have in life much harder to deal with, because you aren't really dealing with them. You're escaping from them. And, it's like people who drink to drown their memories. That doesn't really work from a clinical standpoint. Alcohol's a depressant, so you're not really curing much, are you? So it's sad, when you compound your struggles with substance abuse. I don't know that Chris was involved in that currently. So I don't know, but I know that in the past it was a contributor to some things in his life, and I know it was for Lane Staley and some other artists who you mentioned. Sure, it's not a pretty picture, man.
Amber in the SOR Space Travelers Club actually has a very good comment here. It's not a question, but I want to get you to react to this. She says, I'm super depressed about Chris Cornell. There is no frickin' way that he committed suicide. I will have to do more research. Just saying, the Illuminati have their kill list. What do you think about that?
Because of what I do, and I'm involved in the alternative media and things like that. I actually was asked. I've been asked about that several times today. Ironically, I don't see any evidence of that at this point. I've heard of nothing of the sort. and I'm not familiar per se with Chris's politics or him speaking out on anything. I think that sometimes when people die and you look up to them or they were special to you, an artist can be that for us. I think a lot of times we want to deny it, and it can happen, to anybody. So I would say to your listener, give it some time, see what comes out in the wash. Anything's possible, but I don't see any evidence of that right now. I mean, I understand that it's tough to process, and you struggle for answers and you want to know what's going on. But my to answer that more specifically, my experience with these things is that first of all, you and I have talked about this before. I don't believe there is an Illuminati per se. Not in the way that people think that it exists per se. There are definitely some dark forces at work in the entertainment industry, in the corporate industry, and all those levels, and the government levels, all that, 100%. And there's a lot of sinister things going on. But, you know me, I kind of shy away from that whole generic term Illuminati and, whacking people for the sake of whacking people. I think some of those fears or concerns are a little bit overinflated. And then in other times, I think they're not really entertained to the degree that they should be. As far as Chris goes, I don't see any reason. I've never known him to be particularly politically outspoken or be a target for anybody that would want to do that. I don't see the motivation there. I don't know. Maybe Amber knows something I don't, but from what I can tell, I don't see anything like that in his story. Generally speaking, when I see that kind of thing and when my radar goes up on that, it's when someone's been very vocal about things, and they've ruffled the wrong feathers one too many times. And I believe there have been cases like that, or at least cases I believe are strong possibilities of that in the entertainment industry. As far as Chris goes, I don't see any evidence of that, but who knows? Maybe time will tell. More of the story will come out. I watched a little bit of his video from his performance at the Fox Theater, the last performance Soundgarden did, just hours before he was found in his hotel room. And having seen Soundgarden several times over the years, and seeing them perform and seeing Chris perform, solo and other things, I can tell you that from my opinion is he did not look like himself. He did not look 100% at all. And it was more than just, being tired from tour. He just sort of looked, I talked to one of my friends here in town. He's a really good friend of mine. He's a rock DJ on one of the stations here. And his comment was the same thoughts as mine. He said he just said he kind of wasn't there. Kind of looked like he was already missing when he was on stage. And, I don't think I could have put it a better way. He just, whatever was going on in the hours before, days before, I don't know. He didn't look himself. He wasn't himself. And from what I understand, he was missing entire verses of the songs, forgetting words, letting the audience sing a lot of the song, claimed that he couldn't find one of his guitars he needed for a song, yet it was right there on the stand and fully tuned and ready to go. So a lot of different things coming out that suggest that maybe he was suffering more than what people think. So
almost like the decision had been made.
Yeah, that's the implication a little bit, like from people who have spoken out on it.
Why do you think there is so much conspiracy in the music world? I mean, we have people already claiming conspiracy about Chris Cornell. We have people who believe that Courtney Love or someone else killed Kurt Cobain. Elvis is a conspiracy. We have, Jimi Hendrix. There's a conspiracy whether or not he was murdered. Jim Morrison, the exact same way. Why do you think there is so much around conspiracy in music that all of these people have died, and somehow, by God's own grace, Keith Richards still lives?
Yeah, Keith's figured something out, hasn't he? All the names you mentioned there, none of those at all have I ever felt like there was a conspiracy at all to do them in. They all led fantastic, amazing lives. They were extremely talented and well-loved and gave us a lot of art to enjoy in our lifetime. But they also indulged quite a bit, all of them, all those names you mentioned. And a lot of them dealt with severe depression. So I don't know. I think that the idea that there's a conspiracy somewhere I think that these are trivial personalities. There's the person, obviously, the real person, right? But then there's the personality that people buy the posters and hang on their wall or watch the videos of or listen to the music or watch their shows. And so there's the personality. And, there's a big detachment there. That's not the same entity. There's the personality and then there's the person. And, you're going to pick a lot of the person up from the personality, but you don't know what somebody's day-to-day life is like. You don't know their struggles. You don't know if they're upset at their significant other or if someone in their family just died, or maybe they've got some sort of substance abuse problem that the public doesn't know about. There's just so many things that can go on in a person's life that the public doesn't necessarily know anything about. And there's not enough hours in the day to know what someone's feeling or thinking constantly. But because they are a personality, because they are someone that we watch and follow and idolize and trivialize, number one, I think that when they pass, I think it's hard for us to process that. Similar to, but on a different level than, say, someone in your own life, a family member. A family member passes away, someone you love and that's dear to you. You're going to process that in a lot of ways. It's going to be very, very personal to you. When you idolize someone, you may feel something very similar to that because you put so much worship, for lack of a better word, into them, or you may have idolized them to such a degree that you may feel something similar to that. But whereas you may know a family member and you may have more of a real personal connection with them, with that person that you idolize, you basically have to fill in those emotional gaps with, the way their art affected you, or maybe something that you heard in an interview, which is only a nugget of them. That's only a part of them. You know what I mean? So I think that when those gaps are there, it's easy for conspiracies to start swirling around. I don't think they would do that. They were so happy, or this or that, or they had so much going for them, or this or that. And maybe it looked that way from the outside, but you have no idea what somebody's personal struggles or demons might be in real life. So I think it's an easy trap for people to get into, to just automatically want to. I think it's just a curious nature of people to want to fill in those gaps. And I think, the possibility of a conspiracy might be something that that people could easily entertain, at least for a little while, as an explanation to why something may have happened. But tragically, more often than not, to be honest with you, I think that a lot of these people, they just live much different lives in reality than what, we think they do because of their personality versus the real person.
We got to get ready for a break here, Jamie. And I want to read this to you before we go, because Seth in the SOR Space Travelers Club posted a great meme that says, every time a musician dies, Keith Richards experiences the quickening. And I thought that was kind of funny. I really did. We're going to get touch more into the music scene coming up in hour number 2 of Rebel Planet News right here on Spaced Out Radio. Jamie Sexton, owner and editor of RPN, rebelplanetnews.com, which will be launching this summer. Look for it. It's going to be a straight up, no BS, real-time news outlet from the alternative in order to try and bring some credibility back to the news side. We're going to talk more music with Jamie Sexton right after this. We're going to get into chemtrails, maybe a little New World Order as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this. Coming September 29th to October 1st, the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon. Hi, this is Dave Scott. The event will be held at the Spruce Hills Spa and Resort in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Come join us for an amazing weekend of speakers talking all things paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, aliens, Sasquatch, intuitiveness. Listen to great speakers like Miriam Delicato, Samantha Mowat, and the crypto guru, Ronald Murphy. Get your VIP passes by going to spacedoutradio.com and clicking on the Paracon banner. Come to BC, where the paranormal is waiting for you.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, they're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
It's paranormal news at its finest. Welcome to The Encounter. At spacedoutradio.com, The Encounter online is SOR's trusted news source for everything weird and strange going on around the world. This is news editor Eric Markham. Our team of journalists are scouring the planet for those strange stories that rarely make the mainstream. No fear-mongering or fake news here. Head over to spacedoutradio.com and encounter The Encounter.
Hey, this is Canadian Paranormal Investigator Mike Moore. The third Wednesday of every month, I'll be teaming up with Dave Scott to bring you Ghosts of the Great White North. Each month, we will bring on guests from across Canada to discuss their ghostly encounters. Canada is a paranormal hotbed with stories you've never heard, so we're going to bring them to you. So get comfy on your Chesterfield, grab a donut, and join us, eh?
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit. And expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio Live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, Derek White, Sky Clown, joins us. We are going to be talking everything from paranormal to shamanism, from a First Nations point of view. It's going to be a great show tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at the mighty SOR. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. We're also live in New Orleans on 107.7 FM, the United Public Radio Network, spread around 160 countries around the world. We're also on KTLK, The Fringe FM, Renegade Talk Radio, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember, the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell is back with the SOR Space Traveler's password of the night. Quadragintareme. Quadragintareme. What the hell is this? Quadragintareme? Gintareme. That's it. Quadragintareme. There you go. There's your password for tonight. Bill tries to screw me up every night. I think I got it, but that is your SOR Space Travelers Club password of the night. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio as well. If you want to connect with us live during the show, you can follow us on Facebook. Give it a like. Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. And our website is SpacedOutRadio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you. A plethora of features, including our brand new Spaced Out Radio store. We got t-shirts, we got posters, we got stickers. Soon we will have candles of Carl the Alien. Make sure you pick up your t-shirts today. They are in limited supply, so I hope you get them. Wear them proud, and if you get a poster, I'll sign it as well. While on our website, check out the Encounter Online. It's a great way for you to connect with what is happening in the news right here, right now. Tonight we are talking with Jamie Sexton from Rebel Planet News. Jamie comes on this show the third Thursday of every month. His website, rebelplanetnews.com, will fire up this summer. It's an alternative media site trying to bring some truth and some justice back to journalism. Jamie, welcome back.
Hey.
You know, I do want to mention this because we were talking about Chris Cornell from Soundgarden, Temple of the Dog, Audio Slave, committing suicide. I do want to mention there is a suicide prevention number in the United States where most of our listeners are, 800-273-TALK. That's 800-273-TALK. If you're feeling depressed, and I've been there, I make no bones about it. I am someone who suffers from depression and anxiety. I have had those ugly thoughts. Give it a call if you are having those ugly, dark thoughts, because there's someone there to talk to you. 800-273-TALK. Make sure you do that ASAP if you are in trouble. And looking at the Space Needle in Seattle tonight, where Soundgarden and some great bands came, it's very rare that they actually turn the lights out on the Space Needle. That is the type of respect that Chris Cornell is getting from his hometown in the Emerald City.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really is. Really is. He was one or another. Let me ask you this, because this has come up quite a bit in our chat room when we were talking about this. Mm-hmm. Whether it's the blues, whether it's Charlie Daniels, the devil went down to Georgia looking for a soul to steal, there's a lot of people who believe that in rock and roll, many artists have sold their soul to the devil for fortune, fame, women, whatever it may be. Do you buy into that whole legend of music?
Well, you know, I don't talk much about religion. I'm not a very religious person myself. So, you know, a lot of my beliefs probably diverge there. But then again, you know, having said that, religion is a personal thing, and I respect anyone's beliefs. So I talk about it in that context when I'm asked about it. And, you know, I've heard some really interesting stories over my lifetime. One of the most interesting is there was an interview with Bob Dylan, and I'm struggling to remember who was interviewing him, but it was a really interesting, and you can find it on YouTube. But he was asked about why he would continue to play music and write music and all those sorts of things at his age, and yeah, he does all but mention the devil in his interview. He alludes that he sold his soul to the devil. Again, that parts ways with my beliefs, but you know, Bob Dylan's a pretty reputable guy. I've always found him to be not only a great musician and great artist, but also an intellectual guy, very smart guy. So I respect, you know, his thoughts and his beliefs. What he meant by that, I really don't know. He's not the only one in the entertainment industry that has given me pause as far as some of their statements and some of their behavior goes. But I don't know what exists in their mind, in their world, in their reality, or what deals they may or may not have made. I've always struggled, as I'm sure you have in life, with the proverbial two devils on each shoulder. Or it actually is. I think it's supposed to be an angel on one and a devil on the other. Sometimes I feel like I got a devil on both shoulders. But I don't know. I've heard these stories before. I think a lot of times I look at that in a metaphorical sense. I think a lot of times these artists sell a little bit of their integrity, maybe a lot of it, to the record companies and studios and things like that, be it an actor or a musician or even someone in business outside of the entertainment industry. I think a lot of times we do give up a little bit of our integrity to make a deal for financial gain. So in that context, perhaps.
And I understand that, and I can see where that happens. I mean, but you look at gentlemen like Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones are believed. There's a big story that our resident preacher Eric Markham brought up in the chat room as well, that years ago they said the Rolling Stones helped sacrifice Brian Jones for their fame and fortune, and that's why they have to keep touring, so none of the other ones actually pass away. There's all of these, as he said, Rolling Stones sacrificed Brian Jones to make a pact with the devil to go on forever. That is the legend anyways. There's a lot of these stories in rock and roll. Does it just go with the folklore of music and the strangeness that is out there when it comes to music? Like, I realize you're not a religious guy and you try and hold off anything with God, the devil, whatever it is. You're a straight up guy, and I know you personally, so I could vouch for that. But when it comes to music, there seems to be a lot of tempting fate, if we can use those words.
Yeah, I agree with that. They tempt fate quite a bit. When it comes to art and music and performing, even acting, things like that, I tried to explain to someone recently. I was asked about a particular artist. I won't mention their name, but in context, I was asked, so are they really that freaky in real life? It's someone that I know and someone that performs. It's a singer. And I said, no, not at all. And they said, well, how do they do that then? I mean, because they're so convincing with their character. And, I got to say, 25 plus years of being a musician and playing in different bands and things like that, even if you're not doing a shtick, even if you're not wearing a costume or makeup or assuming some sort of character on stage, I can tell you from all that experience of singing, just when you go on stage, just to do what you do, you do adopt a bit of an alter ego. There is a process. There's a mental process that happens. It's some sort of I can't explain it very clearly, other than just to say it's adopting a character, and you do that. It's for me, it was something that I could feel. It was something I always considered it something that I was doing to help me get over stage fright or help me perform better. But there's a little mental preparation. I'm not burning candles or doing seances or sitting in the middle of pentagrams or anything like that. It wasn't anything like that for me. But a few minutes of quiet time, doing vocal warm-ups alone, just to get in the right mindset, in the zone, whatever you want to call it. And I don't want to get hokey about it, but to put it in context, you just kind of feel like you become someone else while you're performing. I don't know to what degree other people may go down that path, what processes they may do, what they consider that to be, if there's more involved for them in doing that. I don't really know. Like I said, I'm very cautious to ever speak for anyone else. As far as what I see that in a lot of performers. But I also know that what I see on stage and what I witness in some of their antics and things like that is a lot different than the person off the stage. A lot different. I've been to Alice Cooper's house. I used to live with his guitar player when I was younger, Dick Wagner, who's passed away now. But Dick, I was in a son with Dick, Dick's son. I was in a band with Dick's son, Mike Wagner. And we all took a trip out to Phoenix to Alice Cooper's house once. And, I'd never met Alice at that point. I think I was just 18 or 19 years old at that time. But when we went out there, I had heard all these stories and seen all these, rock videos on MTV and all these things of Alice Cooper. And so I had all these preconceived notions of who Alice Cooper was. When we get to his house, he's out back playing golf, and he makes us hot dogs out on the grill. He's just, a regular guy, and it just, that's happened to me so many times in my life where, the character that I think people play and the stories that are told about them and their lifestyle and the rumors that circulate and all that sort of thing far, far exceed the real person, the character that they are in real life. And as far as the story about the Rolling Stones, that's just something that sounds like fairy tale to me. I can't imagine, anything like that really happening. I do know that there is a lot of brainwashing that goes on in the entertainment industry. But that generally doesn't happen with your average rock band or your average performer. That kind of thing just doesn't go on. I think once you get up to the major corporate level and a whole lot of money is involved and different things are being manipulated, I don't know. I tend to think that there is something there on those levels. I don't know who's manipulating these people, to what degree or by what means, if they're encouraging them to take drugs or partake in, some sort of ritualistic practice. I can't speak to that. I do know that some of the behavior of people on some very corporate levels of the entertainment industry is very bizarre, very weird. What it is per se, I can't really say. But again, whenever you leave those gaps, people will tend to fill them in themselves. And I hear a lot of stories. Led Zeppelin was notorious for having stories being told about them and all of their witchcraft and that sort of thing. And, the thing is, a lot of these artists will lean into it with their creativity. They'll start wearing the symbols, or they'll have fun with it, even though they don't actually believe any of that, practice it, or anything else. And I've talked to some people about that, so I know they do that. But I tend to, I don't take a lot of that stuff really serious, to be honest with you. That people are being led around literally by the devil or some satanic force. But again, the mind is a powerful thing, so who knows? I don't know what happens,
Got a question coming from our chat room for you, and this one comes from Beyond the Omniverse. He is asking, do you sense, Jamie, that some performers could be possessed?
Well, again, that would be in contradiction with my own beliefs. I don't believe that people are. I don't believe there are spirits to possess people. So that's my own personal belief. So I wouldn't believe that. I tend to think, and I've said this a couple of times here in the past few minutes, but I think the mind is a very powerful thing. That's where my beliefs lie. And I think a lot of times our own demons come from within. I think that you could, like I said, I adopted an alter ego to perform. Sometimes I'll do that to create. I call it being in the zone. Athletes have talked about the same thing. But that can be a little bit of a rabbit hole, if you start to believe that sort of thing. So how deep someone could go down a rabbit hole and believe things, or let their mind and emotions take them places that may be unhealthy for them, perhaps. Or maybe there is a devil and I'm just not keen on it. But my own personal belief, that would be in contradiction of. So I don't believe in possession. I do think that, I've seen people that are definitely out of their minds, and I'm not necessarily sure what it is that got them there, whether it be drugs or possession or whatever it may be. But some people just aren't quite right all the time, and I've seen it firsthand. I tend to shy away from that. If I can't relate to something, I kind of scoot away from it. I'll get on the other side of the couch from it, figuratively speaking. So.
You're in the hot seat, man. There could be a story there for you.
Could be.
Yeah. Absolutely. There could be a big-time story there. Let's get to a question from... Actually, it's not a question, it's a comment, and I'll save that one for later. But in regards to music, if you don't believe that people are selling their soul or making a pact with something evil, do you think that music, then, is just something that brings out that inner thought, that inner child, that inner attitude that people can't have on a daily basis, carrying their briefcase down in New York or Chicago or Toronto or someplace like that? It gets them away from the real world where they can act the way they want. Do you think it's more so something like that, James?
Well, for the listener, for the viewer, and for anybody that enjoys art, whether it be music or movies or a play or the symphony or whatever it may be. Yeah, that's what art is supposed to do. Art is supposed to be something that we that is in some way a little bit abstract from direct. Art is supposed to be, in my opinion anyway, it's supposed to be a translation of something, an emotion, a thought, intellectually, emotionally, whatever it may be. It's supposed to make you feel something or think something. And in that sense, sure, I think that a lot of times we'll view art or hear a song or something, and we can live vicariously through that, or we can let our emotions run with it. We've all heard a song that brings tears to our eyes, or maybe we hear a song that gets us jazzed up and makes us want to take on the world and we feel good about life, or maybe we hear a song and it really brings us down and reminds us of loss or whatever. I think if art is done correctly, whatever medium of art it may be, it will touch you. That's what it's supposed to do. That's a very powerful thing. And as humans, we're very emotional creatures. So I think that that's the beauty of art for us, is to be able to feel it that way. I think when people are really, really good at that, and artists are really good, like Chris Cornell, I think when people are very good at that, we tend to think that something else must be going on with them for them to be able to relate to us that way. And, I think as artists, and I've written my whole life as a writer, as a singer, and other things, and I try to do the same thing. When I write, if I were to write something just for me, I wouldn't feel like I really did anything. If I write something down and I feel like I think someone could relate to this, I feel like someone might understand this, then I feel I'm usually proud of that. I feel like, that's what it's supposed to do. As far as possession goes and what we might consider the darker side of that kind of stuff, I don't know. For me, most of it's theater. I don't really get haunted at night by things like demons and goblins and worry about that sort of thing. I think that there's enough evil in the world, in ourselves, in mankind, to go around that I need to be worried about that, not what might be coming out of the floorboards or the woodwork. Other people have different beliefs, and I respect that. I'm always at least entertained, if not very curious, to hear people's stories and learn from them about their own experiences. But from my experience, I think that, again, the mind is a very, very powerful thing. And I think because we're emotionally driven creatures, a lot of times we can create our own reality. We can create our own evil. We can create our own goodness. And it's kind of like, which path you choose every day. And art really brings that out, because it touches us. I mean, I've been in some really low places in my life, and music, just listening to music has brought me out of it. Art's a very powerful thing. As far as if people are possessed and things like that, I don't know. I've never met an artist, to be perfectly honest, who's ever told me they were possessed. Like I said, I have seen some things like that Bob Dylan interview, and I found it pretty entertaining. If anybody has time, look it up on YouTube. Bob Dylan says he made deal with the devil. I forget who interviewed him, but that was curious to me, to find someone that I consider intelligent, talented, and been around for quite a while to allude that they may have penciled a deal with the devil for their career. That's interesting to me. Do I believe it literally? I would have problems believing that. But I've heard some stories. I just never really experienced that with anybody that sat down and say, so have you dealt with the devil lately? They'll laugh at you. I've never... Nobody's ever openly admitted any sort of thing like that to me.
Well, there's always a first. I'm going to get you to move back from your microphone or do what you did earlier, because we're getting a lot of feedback on you again there, my friend.
All right.
I do apologize.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's much better. That's much better. Yeah.
Good deal.
We got to figure this out. It almost sounds, on this end, there's an old printer going, a dot matrix type printer. That's what it's coming across on this end. So, yeah, weird, man, very weird, but that's okay. It's the sounds of rock and roll hell coming through.
That's right. Maybe my computer's possessed.
It is. Your computer is possessed by Keith Richards snorting his father's ashes like cocaine.
Amazing.
And he's still alive. Did he
do that?
Apparently.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I haven't heard that one. That's amazing. I did hear about the blood transfusion. That's an amazing story.
Yes.
Had all of his blood replaced.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Cool. I do want to remind our listeners who are trying to follow along on Twitter. Twitter seems to be down right now, which is weird because it never happens during this show. And a lot of people are having troubles getting posts through. I'm sure Twitter is working on it, but I'm trying to tweet in there as well and not having much luck. Hey, let's switch topics here, my friend, because lately you have been posting a lot on chemtrails and the cause and effects of of what is happening there. There's a lot of people who still are conflicted whether there's chemtrails or they're just aircraft contrails with the modernization of technology. What do you think it is, my friend? Tell us what you've learned about chemtrails.
Well, I can tell you they are not contrails, period. They're not contrails. I'm old enough to remember playing outside, football, baseball, laying in the grass and staring at the sky and watching jet airplanes fly over all the time. And I know very well what a contrail looks like. And I know what the sky looked like when I was a kid. We never had those, our sky filled with the amount of fake clouds like it is now. The contrail, for anybody that doesn't know, contrail means condensation trail. And condensation is a basic principle in science. And the idea of a contrail with a jet airplane is that because these planes are flying at elevations of, approximately 30,000 feet, sometimes a little lower, a little higher, the air up there is very cold. So when a hot airplane engine flies through that area of the atmosphere, it leaves behind condensation, ice crystals. And you can visibly see it. A lot like, when you're playing outside on a cold day and you can see your breath. That's condensation. It's a basic, scientific principle. The thing is, though, is that if that were the case, that condensation trail would just simply disappear when the air regulated itself back to normal temperature. The cloud that you see would not remain for hours and hours and hours and fan out and be visible and join other clouds and fill the sky. The temperature at that atmosphere would cool back down and regulate itself, and that would now airplanes do leave contrails, and you can witness that as well. If you look up and see a jet airplane with a contrail behind it, it's usually anywhere from several hundred yards and sometimes a mile long. But you will also, within a minute or two, you'll notice that trail completely disappear. Behind that is a condensation trail. What we're witnessing now and have been witnessing for a long time, a number of years, is more and more and more chemtrails. Chem being short for chemical trails. These airplanes are emitting something that is lingering in the atmosphere, and will fan out and join, the trails of the trails left by other airplanes, and before you know it, a perfectly blue sky is filled up with these chemical trails with no natural clouds in the sky whatsoever. And I witness it all the time in Las Vegas, but this is something that's going on worldwide. This is not a localized thing at all. It's very well documented.
I remember being able to see blue sky near Vancouver, and when I lived down there, and that was as low as maybe 10, 12 years ago. There seems to be a real influx of what is going on regarding how much they are spraying. Have you looked into what they are actually spraying right now?
Yeah, and the reason that you mentioned that I've been talking about it a little more lately, the reason that I've been talking about it a little more lately is because they're actually admitting to it now, at least in a peripheral way. Harvard University has just released that they are experimenting with chemical trails, chemical spraying from airplanes. But they are just now saying that. Now, this has been going on for 20 plus years as far as the regular spraying of our atmosphere worldwide. This is not a new thing. But the term that surfaced over the past 3 to 5 years that's gained some popularity is called cloud seeding. And it's supposed to be a process allegedly by which institutions are seeding clouds for weather manipulation. And it's also suggested that they may be seeding clouds for the purpose of combating man-made global warming. I personally don't buy either one of those excuses at all. Number one, I'm not sold on the idea of man-made global warming as a global crisis at this point, to begin with. But secondly, even if there was such a problem, I've listened to some very compelling arguments from the scientific community, well-qualified scientists who argue that even if there was such a thing, spraying chemicals from an airplane to manipulate the rays of the sun would not be effective in any way whatsoever against such a thing. And as far as weather manipulation goes, that doesn't really hold either, because these clouds that are being created by these airplanes don't produce any weather. In other words, they don't produce any precipitation, and there doesn't seem to be any difference in temperature between before they spray or after. There doesn't seem to be any true weather manipulation in their efforts at all. And either one of those explanations sounds a little bit to me like they're trying to pawn off some sort of valid purpose for it. Oh, well, we're regulating weather, or we're combating global warming. Well, if you were doing that, and if those efforts were for the good of the earth or the environment or people, why would you have lied about it for 20 and 30 years? You know what I mean? You don't usually lie about things that are good. You know, people lie about things that are bad. So to deny that something exists for 20 plus years when we can see it with our naked eye every day, and then finally 20 years later come out and slowly introduce this idea that you're seeding clouds, I don't buy it. Not at all. And furthermore, the term seeding clouds would only hold weight if there were clouds in the sky to begin with. Most of the time when I see these chemtrails being sprayed, it's a perfectly blue sky. There aren't any clouds to be seen in the entire horizon. And all of a sudden now, you know, the sky's filled with crisscross patterns, airplane after airplane, and now you've got a sky full of man-made clouds. That's not cloud seeding. That's cloud creating. And so I don't buy that whatever they're doing is good for us. Some studies have been done on the ingredients of the chemicals in these clouds that they're spraying. And most indications seem to be that it's some sort of heavy metal, some aluminum, iron oxide, barium, other things like that. And all of these chemicals are extremely unhealthy for the environment and for human beings.
I know since I moved up north here in British Columbia that we maybe up here get one chemtrail a month. I see a lot of contrails now, but one chemtrail a month compared to probably 15 to 25 when I lived near Vancouver. And I know that American metropolitan areas are getting hammered more and more. I've seen when I've driven through the West Coast what it's like when you have blue sky all around you, and you're sitting at Disneyland, and yet all you see is hazy cloud. Yes, that could be the smog in that area, but Las Vegas, where you are, doesn't have a lot of smog. Yet there's the chemtrails hanging around when you're sitting by the pool at one of the casinos. They are absolutely everywhere. What do you think the actual purpose of all of this is? A lot of people will believe that it is to help create diseases, that the medicinal companies, Big Pharma, is in on this. There's weather manipulation, whether it's with CERN. There's military manipulation because of the military-industrial complex. Which way are you leaning towards all of this?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't have a particular leaning as far as what I believe it may be for. It's one of those things like we talked about earlier on the other topic where people are left to speculate because we don't know. It's being kept from us, in an official capacity. It's being kept from us. At this point, the general public is left to speculate as to what it might be. And when you're left to speculate, you incorporate some good thinking and common sense, you have to say, well, if they're spraying these particular chemicals, which have been tested, and a lot of the population has heard about what I just told you, the heavy metals, the aluminums and things, and we know that those chemicals aren't good for us, then we're left to kind of speculate, well, what may that be? Why would somebody be doing that? And then, conclusions like, well, maybe Big Pharma's paying for it and they can sell the cure. Or, you're left with a whole plethora of possibilities, most of which are not good. Some people would argue that if it were, in fact, weather manipulation, that might be a good thing. Again, I'm just not buying that it has anything whatsoever to do with weather manipulation. For some of the reasons I mentioned, for example, calling it cloud seeding when there's absolutely no clouds in the sky. What are you doing? You're not seeding a cloud. There's no cloud. You're creating a new cloud out of chemicals. That's not cloud seeding. And again, there's been no evidence that these clouds produce weather, affect the temperature, anything like that. So a lot of it is left to speculation at this point. I believe if I had to pick a demon in this, if I had to pick a sinister motivation, the most likely one at this point does seem to be to manipulate our health. To what end, I really don't know. Whether they're doing it to experiment with chemical warfare, whether there's some other sinister motivation at play, I really don't know yet. I've explored a lot of the different angles of it, and I'm still doing that. When I'm ready, I will offer a more qualified explanation as to what I think it may be. But right now, I'm not prepared to do that. I do know that the chemicals that are being sprayed themselves and that have been tested and proven to be in some of these chemtrails, the heavy metals and the aluminums and the iron oxides and those things, the barium, those things have been proven to severely weaken the immune system. There's some evidence that they can lead to illnesses like Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, things like this. So whether that's the intent of the spraying or just an evil side effect of the spraying, neither one is good. And the fact that someone can just pay for a program to spray the skies with deadly chemicals with no explanation officially offered to the public is in my opinion not a good thing. And it's one of the things that to me shows blatant evidence that there are powers in this world and forces at work that don't really have the general population's best interest at hand. It's for me it's one of the glaring examples that there are powers and entities in the world that will do whatever they want to do. The public be damned. Because as far as I'm concerned, you and me and every living creature on this planet should have a say about what's being sprayed above our heads in our clouds and in our skies. We should have a say in that, and we should be informed about what's going on and why. And we should be very upset and concerned and getting these answers. This is our world. We need to know what's happening. So this is a topic that I have particular interest in. I'm still doing a lot of investigation with Rebel Planet News on this topic, and it's going to be one of our first stories when we go live later this summer. But I can tell you that whatever they're doing is not for the betterment of humanity, and I don't buy any of the partially official statements that have come out, weather manipulation to combat global warming. I'm not buying any of that. It doesn't wash. It doesn't wash at all.
Do you think then that there are diseases being created out of this? There is a disease out there called Morgellons disease where famous people like Joni Mitchell, the singer, apparently has this disease where it's almost like feeling like there is bugs crawling under people's skins to the point where they're almost itching themselves to death, much like a heroin addict would do when they get the itch. And there's literally scratching through the skin, like they'll scratch right to the bone if they have to. And that's why a lot of Morgellons people, which hasn't been officially diagnosed by any sort of professional medical examiner, and I apologize that I don't know the medical term down in the United States properly for that, but there are people who are having these itches. They're having these almost like microscopic fibers that look like hair but feel like aluminum or sort of metals that are protruding out of their skin, almost like a popped blackhead would, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it's pretty disgusting. Have you ever looked into the tie-in between Morgellons disease?
That is one of the topics that came up when we were exploring, and we still are, the different illnesses that seem to be kind of unexplained scientifically at this point. I'm not qualified yet to speak on that per se, but I will say this, that if there's any truth to the fact that these chemicals weaken your immune system, that in itself, just generally speaking, could open up all sorts of odd diseases and things that our bodies would normally combat in a natural environment, which, if our immune system is weakened, won't do. But in addition to that, are you still there, Dave?
I sure am.
Okay. In addition to that, I think that that the chemicals themselves have been proven in other forms of experimentation to lead directly to certain illnesses, like the Alzheimer's and the and things like that, Parkinson's. Those chemicals are known contributors to those types of diseases. But you're right. Anything that weakens the immune system, a lot of things could be happening. I think one of the interesting things that we stumbled across was that Monsanto actually applied for a patent for aluminum-resistant seeds. So why would Monsanto be doing that? Why would they be concerned with aluminum-resistant seeds? Do they know something we don't? You know what I mean? Why are they concerned that there may be enough aluminum in the atmosphere to affect their plants? As you know, Monsanto doesn't have the best reputation for looking out for our health to begin with, but they're definitely concerned with whether or not their plants are going to survive enough so that they applied for patents to protect their seeds from aluminum in the atmosphere. So these are the type of things that we consider red flags in our investigation and things that we want answers to. We want to know what they know that they're not telling us. And, there's been a number of reports over the past, 10 years, but increasingly so over the past 5 years, things where, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, where thousands and thousands of birds just drop out of the sky or are found dead on the beach. And the same thing with fish and other wildlife, just massive amounts of wildlife dead unusually. And to me, that sounds like some type of poisoning. If you've got thousands of birds dropping out of the sky, what made them do that? And chemtrails might be they might be a good suspect for that.
Seems like there's a lot happening on. I know with Revolution Radio, there's live connections on Skype just went down. So if you heard a little bit of thumping, that was coming from the Skype line. Twitter seems to be back. Twitter seems to be back up now, so we seem to be good and up and running back on Twitter as well. One of the things that I learned about this Morgellons disease is how it literally is not diagnosed. I have a cousin of mine who is a very brilliant man. He was actually chosen to be one of the doctors for Canada's Olympic team when they send the athletes over to different countries. And he's very well respected when it comes to diseases and everything. And I was surprised to learn that when I asked him about Morgellons, he had never heard of it. Why do you think the medical community, as you look into Morgellons more, is still in denial that this disease is out there, and instead is saying the people who are suffering from it are suffering from psychosis-type hallucinations, and really they need to be put in a padded cell rather than claiming that there is a disease that isn't discovered yet?
Well, I'm not qualified to necessarily answer that question, but I think that the scientific community, especially the medical community, usually doesn't like to weigh too heavily in on things until they can offer an explanation themselves, and more importantly, until they can sell you some sort of drug to fix it. So. Not to put a negative spin on it, but that's just generally the way the medical community operates. Right. Until they can explain it fully or sell you some sort of treatment, they don't really want to comment too much. And I've heard those same things that it seems like something that somebody may be making up, but I don't know how you would make up something that you can have physical proof of. When you have a skin situation that you can photograph and take pictures of and document, I don't know how you can necessarily deny that. That's odd to me.
Apparently, our Spreaker online is down as well. I don't know if anybody else is having that. Apparently, the internet could be being attacked right now, my friend. This is weird. That would be odd. Yeah, my stuff went out there for a minute, too. That's why I was stuttering to make sure you could hear me. I don't know. I do want to say this, Jamie. On June 7th, which is a Wednesday night, I want you to tune into this show because I'm going to have a couple of Morgellons specialists on this program. And I think this would be a good show for you to listen on into, because I know you do listen quite a bit when you're hanging out working on Rebel Planet News. So I think that would be interesting. Maybe we could learn together some research more into Morgellons. It's kind of interesting. Let's get to Gail's question here. She's asking, Jamie, is your site, Rebel Planet News, going to cover Maine and mostly mainstream news, or is the focus going to be more of the off-beaten-path stories?
What I think we're going to focus on mostly is going to be geopolitics and things that I think that we need to, what I feel like we need to focus on collectively as citizens of the world, citizens of our respective countries, things that I think the mainstream news doesn't spend enough time focusing on. Now, that may sound a little bit general, but that's because it is general. Sometimes those things are going to be covering something like, Morgellons disease. If the mainstream news isn't talking about it, and we feel like we have information that people should know, we'll cover it. If it's something like chemtrails, and we feel like we have something new and important to lend to the story that's not just speculation or opinion, we will cover that. If it's politics and we feel like the story hasn't been given its due time, we will focus on that. We're going to try to fill the gaps with what we think I'll tell you what we won't be covering. We won't be covering the Kardashians, or every time Justin Bieber gets in trouble or wrecks his car or anything like that. We're not interested in anything to do with that. We'll have our niche. We're not really going to tackle a lot of subjects that we can't journalistically back up. I enjoy your show for what it offers. You have your niche with things that people love to talk about, but we're not going to, do what you do either. We're going to basically try to go out and take stories that we feel have not gotten the spotlight on them that should. And sometimes that's a daily story. Sometimes it's a general topic, like chemtrails.
And on that note, we're going to hop out for our final break of the night. Rebel Planet News happens here on Spaced Out Radio the third Thursday of every month. Jamie Sexton, owner and editor of Rebel Planet News, the website rebelplanetnews.com, is our guest tonight. He'll be firing up that website in just a month or two. It's going to be excellent. I look forward to it because that's the type of journalism I like. I hope you guys, all of our SOR followers, head on over there as well. And don't be surprised, because I've already told Jamie we're going to do this for our Encounter Online. We're probably going to steal some of his stories, and put them on our website as well in our cross-promotion that we will be doing with both stations. You're listening to Space Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back right after this with hour number 3. Looking for a great weekend getaway this fall? Hi there, this is Dave Scott. Come on up to the heart of British Columbia for the first annual Spaced Out Radio Caribou Paracon, being held at the Spruce Hills Spa and Resort in 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Speakers from all over North America are coming to discuss Bigfoot, UFOs, ghosts, and intuitiveness for the 3-day event, September 29th to October 1st. For more information, go to spacedoutradio.com and click on the Caribou Paracon banner and book your tickets today. Come to BC, where the paranormal is waiting for you.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Wachowski's Strange Days.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride tonight. Tomorrow night on the program, we have Derek White Sky Cloud coming on in. We're going to get into shamanism, the paranormal, and how it works together. It's going to be an interesting show for 3 hours tomorrow night. Going to be a lot of fun, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time. Want to give a shout out to our brand new listener in the Spreaker chat room, Shockwave. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to earn your listening ears tonight for the first time. Thank you so much for doing that. Hey, if you want to follow us on terrestrial radio, go to the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. We're also on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia. We love being live for you and your nighttime entertainment. We're also live on KTLK, The Fringe FM. Also on Renegade Talk Radio out of Las Vegas. And if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Quadragentarim. I think that's it. Quadragentarim is your password. I'm going to go with that one. Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so by following us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show, like Marcus, Canadian Joe, Eric, Deb, Wisteria. You're all in there tonight. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time. I know there's more of you as well. I'll get to you guys later. Also, you can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Player.fm, and Stitcher. Our website is SpacedOutRadio.com, where we got a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. You can also check out our brand new Spaced Out Radio store. We got t-shirts in there. We got stickers. We have a poster. I will autograph that for you and say thank you for supporting us, and maybe something else. We'll see. I'll put a cool little signature on there as well. And soon, Carl the Alien candles for you to grab a hold of as well. Burn down Carl with your candle. That would be kind of cool. Our guest tonight from Rebel Planet News, Jamie Sexton. He comes in the third Thursday of every month to talk about everything that is happening in the alternative media. Now, Rebel Planet News will be launching its website, which will be an all-news section. Eventually, there will be podcasts coming on there as well. Who knows? We're going to do a little bit of cross-promotion with Jamie as well because, well, him and I are buddies. We've gone to Guns N' Roses and partied together. Yes, we have. Jamie, what's going on, man?
No, just had to rescue my cat. Apparently, in the break there, the cat got stuck on the ledge. So,
always a cat, my friend. Always a cat. There is a lot of weird things going on tonight. Revolution Radio's Skype crashed. Twitter has crashed. For some, the website for Spreaker has crashed, so they can't even hear us. They're just playing along. You know, strange times when things like that all of a sudden just start happening out of nowhere. Always makes me scratch my head. I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on here, Jamie. I'm going to do it. Here it comes. You'll hear it right here. That's my tinfoil hat. My daughter made me a tinfoil hat.
Perfect.
So I'm going to put it on right now, just so I know, just in case the aliens start coming down.
I was going to say Carl might show up, huh?
If Carl you know what, that bastard, he still hasn't made it this way. But you know what? I'll tell you this. This is true story. My wife and I are experiencers, and literally about 10 minutes before you and I talked before showtime, she came down here into Uncle Jimbo's cabin, and she's like, I forgot to tell you a story last night while we were sleeping. And she was in and out because our little guy has been sick the last couple of days. So so he's been up like almost every hour on the hour. And so she hasn't been getting a lot of sleep the last 36, 48 hours. And anyhow, long story short, she said she was kind of in one of those half asleep, half awake modes. And all of a sudden, she felt her wrists being grabbed. And almost pinned down. And she tried to wake me, and I wasn't waking up. Because when I'm out, I am out. Like I am sawing logs. Nothing really wakes me up. And long story short, she could only see up to the wrists of the hands that were wrapped around her wrists, pinning her down. Nonetheless, she got it out of there. She does her little voodoo thing that she does. Not really voodoo, but I'm going to call it that. But anyway, she was talking to one of our good friends is highly intuitive. And she actually told my wife, she goes, "You better watch out for Dave because I'm feeling by this weekend he's going to be taken once or twice by the aliens." So apparently I'm getting taken this weekend.
What? Well, that's good. At least this time you got some warning.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. we'll see if it happens. And you know what, my friend? Just to make you a believer, if they take me, okay, I'm gonna ask them to come get you in Vegas.
Please do.
Yeah.
And let them know. Tell them. Let me know if I need to prepare for it. I mean, what do you have a little warning? Did they tell you? I mean, how do you prepare?
I don't know. I just kind of go with the flow. You know, my experiences that I have had so far, you know, besides one that I don't know if it was a dream or not, man, but I sure really believe that it was true, because I'm someone who doesn't remember my dreams. But I remember absolutely punching a gray. And I remember it felt rubbery, and I had forgot about that until a couple of months ago, about a month and a half ago. I had a guest on the show when we were talking about gray aliens. And and just out of the blue, they said, well, their skin feels really rubbery, and you can push it in almost like a plastic bag or something along those lines. And it totally reminded me of that. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm going this weekend or not. I got some busy stuff. I got a busy weekend ahead, so I can't. They can't take me for too long. That's for sure.
Well, do me a favor and strap a GoPro on you, just in case. You know, I think the rest of us would enjoy whatever adventure you get to go on. We can live vicariously through you.
That might be the plan. All right. You know. And no, Aussie Steve, I'm not being carried out of my home by gnomes. You had to start the gnome talk. I hate those damn gnomes. And now, you know, we were going so well without anybody bringing up gnomes tonight. Unlike last night with our guests who stirred the pot up there. See, what happens now is if they're in one of the chat rooms, if you actually tune into this show and you participate under the chat rooms, okay, you'll know that the minute gnomes get brought up, now every feed that I have is going to turn into pictures of gnomes. I'm going to get hammered with gnomes on Twitter. You know, I know Ron Moniak in the Space Out Radio chat room. Yeah, here he goes. There's the gnome pictures coming. I'm going to get absolutely hammered by these. And I hate these little bastards. I do. They scare me. You know, not much scares
the gnomes.
Me. No way, man. Not a hope. Yeah. And to up on the Revolution Radio chat room, yes, I do have a tinfoil hat. I put it on the side right now by my Guns N' Roses collection on the wall here of the cabin. But yes, I do actually have a tinfoil hat. It's sitting right beside. I bet you don't have one of these, Jamie, for your rock and roll collection. And I know you got a lot of swag. I actually got some. I actually got on my Guns N' Roses wall here a bottle of Night Train.
A bottle of Night Train. Awesome.
Yeah. I had friends of mine
I do not have that, no.
I had friends of mine, they brought me back for my 42nd birthday 2 years ago. They actually went down to California on a trip down the coast to San Francisco, and they had to go into the ghetto of Oakland to find bottles of Night Train. And they brought me back 2 bottles, and I'll tell you, it is the worst cough medicine that I've ever had.
It might be effective, though. You never know.
Absolutely. But so we polished off 1 bottle, and we got the other. Yeah, here we go. Here's all the gnomes on Twitter now. Damn it, people.
There you go.
Anyways, Kim, go ahead.
You should have never said you didn't like him.
Oh, no, I'm blaming Aussie Steve. You know, he's sitting down there in Australia in probably like 42-degree heat right now. You know, stirring this up. And I know he's laughing right now. I know he is. You know? But either way, I hate them damn gnomes. I really do. I got one critic in one of the chat rooms in Revolution Radio right now. He goes, his name is Sumgazer. He goes, get more fake guests on, Dave, Scott, SOR. I've never brought on a fake guest. I kind of vet my job, so if you want to challenge me on that.
There you go.
You want to challenge me on it, bring it on. I'm ready for you. I got my tinfoil hat here. And I'm a hockey player, so I know how to foil the knuckles as well. It's all good. Anyways, we were talking about chemtrails the last hour. This is something that is absolutely sticking with you in your investigation with Rebel Planet News. Do you think it is part of some sort of depopulation of the planet? And the reason why I asked that is one of my listeners, Deb, she used to work for some medical companies, I believe, and I'm going to use that term because I'm going to be very vague with who she really worked for. I don't know if she wants me to tell this story or not, but I've already let it slip. And we were talking last night about it, and she is convinced there is something big on chemtrails. In fact, she actually convinced a doctor that she worked for, said, look, the chemtrails are out. Showed the doctor the chemtrails who wasn't buying it. She goes, within the next 8 to 10 days, we need, or within the next 3 to 5 days, we need at least 8 to 10 openings because people are going to be rushing in with respiratory problems. And after a few times of this happening, of showing the doctor and showing the pattern, the doctor was like, holy crap, there is something to this. Do you think that this is a part of some sort of depopulation?
Well, you know, that would be on the fringes, the more extreme sort of conclusions one could make. And that wouldn't totally surprise me if there was some sort of mass genocide agenda with that. I know that there are forces in the world that would love to see that sort of thing happen. Whether they've got, whether they have enough power to make that happen or not has always been a question in this day and age. But if someone were to want to mass, execute genocide or mass extinction on the human population, chemtrails would definitely be an effective way to go, wouldn't it? Especially if it's a slow kill. You do it, a little bit at a time, and you figure out what works, and then, looks like a normal day with normal clouds in the sky, and then all of a sudden people are just dropping off. It would be an effective method.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if we're going to see more of this as it comes along, or what we are going to see here in the next little bit, or if this is just a test to see how humans react to it. Because let's face it, like it or not, the human body is very resilient when it comes to different atmospheres, different chemicals, and yet yet when we look at the way people are being affected by this, it's strange that they would do it to themselves, because there's chemicals being sprayed everywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in a small town in the middle of Arkansas or in Washington, D.C., in the capital. It's it's happening to everyone everywhere. They are showing no mercy. Even the president, whether it's Trump, Obama, whoever it was, okay, is being sprayed.
Yep. Yeah, that's the peculiar part about it. That's one of the mysteries to me about it, is that if you are up to no good and you're spraying the atmosphere with something harmful, you and everyone that you care about would be exposed to it as well. So that's one of the puzzling aspects of the whole thing, and it's a valid question. You know, what's that about? Of course, you could hypothesize that if there was some sort of chemical effect on people that was harmful through this process, maybe they have some sort of counterbalance to that, some sort of, inoculation to it or something. You know, you could speculate forever. One of the things that continues to keep me interested in this story is the secrecy around it, and the denial of it. You know, there is absolutely no question in my mind whatsoever that these chemtrails are chemtrails. In other words, they're not contrails, they're chemical trails. And I happen to know a number of pilots, commercial pilots, as well as military pilots, but one pilot in particular, who happens to be a full-time commercial airline pilot, he's actually the brother of a pretty famous comedian that I happen to know, and we were at this comedian's house for Christmas, and I knew that his brother was a pilot, so we opened the conversation about chemtrails. And much like the other commercial pilots that I've opened this discussion with, they, deny. He started the conversation out that way. No, it's just contrails. And I said, listen, man, this was after a few eggnogs. We were in a few eggnogs deep at this point. And I said, man, come on. I go, you and I both know the basic principles of condensation, and that these are not condensation trails. And he finally relented, just looked me straight in the face and said, all right, man, look. He's like, it is true that we dumped some fuel up there. That much I can tell you. And that's the way he said it. That much I can tell you. It's true that we dumped some fuel up there. Well, just by him saying that and saying it that way confirms some other information that I had gotten. And this was a few years ago. I've learned a lot more since. But at that time, I was getting information that they were, in fact, mixing their fuel with these chemicals. So that what you're seeing, the method by which they're spraying these chemicals, at least the commercial airlines. Now, there are other airlines that are doing it differently, different methods of spraying, and we can get into that. But the commercial airlines, the ones that take off from these regular airports that you and I might hop a flight on, they're doing it through the fuel emissions, and they actually dump fuel. They'll spill some of the fuel while they're up there. I don't think that those pilots are necessarily even informed as to what they're doing or why. They're just told to do it. It's probably part of their normal training for what they do. They probably don't even know what's going on. But he was candid enough to tell me that, okay, man, yeah, we're this much I can tell you. We do dump some fuel while we're up there. And I knew when he was telling me that there was more to the story. But one of the interesting things about these chemtrail planes is that, and I've noticed it here in Vegas. I noticed it in Phoenix. And I also noticed it in Pennsylvania. So that's 3 major places that I've noticed it. What I'm about to tell you very openly is that the flight patterns of these planes that crisscross the sky, not just the chemtrails that you'll see from the average commercial flight, but the ones that will just go back and forth and crisscross and tic-tac-toe the whole sky. These planes are not taking off from commercial airports, and they're not flying at 30,000 feet. They're actually flying well above 30,000 feet, a lot of them. And they are not flying in any normal sort of flight path. They are flying directly over any major airports, any major cities, and not stopping at any of the commercial airports whatsoever. And they'll just circle around and crisscross the whole sky. And within a few hours, they can take a perfectly blue sky, and 20 or 30 planes that are not taking off from our regular airports will completely litter the horizon over any major city. I've seen it time and time again. It happens all the time here in Vegas.
Where do you think they're parking these jets?
Well, one base that we discovered, one of the major ones, is in Arizona, and it's called Pinal Air Park. I think it's called PINAL Air Park, and it's a really remote, sort of nondescript airfield. If you go on Google Earth, you can find it. It's, I believe it's just north of Tucson. It's actually it's off of Highway 10 between Tucson, Arizona and Phoenix, Arizona. And it's called Pinal Air Park. And there's a particular airline, I believe they're called Evergreen Airlines, that owns that. Now, a lot of the Google Earth shots that you'll get of Pinal Air Park are not accurate. They're not up to date. But every now and then you will get an up-to-date shot. I don't know if they swap those satellite images out from time to time, but they don't always look the same. But even when they're not showing you the up-to-date and accurate pictures of Pinal Air Park, you will see a lot of very large commercial type Boeing aircraft there. Not just the airplanes, but airplane parts and other things. It almost looks like a repair facility or a boneyard for jets, although, 70% of the airplanes that are there are working. And most of them are planes that are being worked on and converted into evergreen planes. So to summarize all that, I think what they're doing are they're taking Boeing aircraft or big commercial aircraft and outfitting these particular airplanes to be spray planes, chemtrail planes, and then they'll paint evergreen on the side of it. Now, evergreen is known for being a chemical disbursement airlines. That's what they do. But they'll tell you that they're doing it for crop dusting, major crops, or for to put out fires. You've seen these large aircraft. I'm sure you've seen them where there's like a forest fire, and these aircraft will come over and drop chemicals to put out the fire. Evergreen does supply those types of planes for disbursement, but that makes a great cover for the other spraying that they're doing. So anybody who's curious, if you want to get on Google Earth and look up that spot that I'm telling you, it's just north of Tucson off Highway 10. It's Pinal Air Park. That's one of the major facilities where they're launching those planes from daily. It's not a major airport. It's not a commercial airport. And when they convert these planes over, they'll take a a regular Airbus that has all the windows and all the seats and everything, and they'll rip all those out and cover up the windows and take all the seats out and put the spray canisters in there. And we have photographs, and you can even find photographs online of these conversions that they do to these airplanes for the sake of spraying. So it's a major deal. And then, like I said, there's a lot of planes that take off from airports like Pinal Airport that are not major airports. Although some commercial planes are actually chemtrailing through their jet fuel. These actually use other disbursement systems that are using other spray nozzles and things like that. They're not even mixing it with the jet fuel.
Who do you think owns these aircraft? Because let's face it, to use a 747 or a 757 or 767 for this type of spraying, those are $200-300 million a piece aircraft. And
that's a lot of money. Yeah.
It is a ton of money. We're talking into the trillions of dollars for the aircraft that are spraying in and around all the major metropolises around the world. I mean, and we've seen the pictures. 747s are a big aircraft, man. Same as 57s and 67s. And when you see these people who are spending $200-300 million an aircraft to convert them into spraying machines, somebody has a lot of money to be doing this, because I'm not seeing a lot of profit coming from this.
Well, again, a lot of times when we analyze these things and conspiracy theories and things like that, we tend to look at that angle. We look at it as face value, like where's the profit? Well, there's different ways to look at that. First of all, if you have a global agenda, right? There are institutions that print money. So they're not really worried about money. They print money. They are the banks. You know what I mean? If you want to look at it on that global scale, the string pullers, they're not concerned with money per se. But if you want to consider some options of how they may pay for it, what if you invented a problem like global warming, and then you invented a solution for that, like weather manipulation or something to that effect? It sort of pays for itself, doesn't it? So when your real intention isn't necessarily to protect the environment at all, but maybe to kill people. So I'm not offering a conclusion per se, but I'm saying these are some of the things that we are investigating and exploring right now, because you're right. Somebody is paying for all of these conversions. And this isn't a conspiracy theory. You can actually go to Pinal Airport if you like, if you feel like taking the drive. The security there is not that massive. They do have some military, oddly enough, even though it's supposed to be a privately owned airport, they do have some military vehicles there guarding the place. But it's not heavy. You can actually drive around it in the desert there and take pictures of the aircraft. You can take pictures of the painting of the aircraft, the conversions, all sorts of different things. So it's not necessarily out in the open, but it's also not heavily guarded. But what my point is that it does exist. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is actually happening. And Evergreen, ironically, is a legitimate company. If you were a city or a county, let's say Los Angeles County, and you were concerned with forest fires, and you wanted to buy, if the county wanted to buy one of these airplanes to spray to combat forest fires, they would call Evergreen and order one of their planes that's outfitted to combat forest fires, because those mechanisms are on board. Spraying is spraying. You can spray anything you want out of them. But so in that sense, this company Evergreen does offer services like that, and they also offer services to to big commercial farming communities that want to spray pesticides and things like that on the crops. So they are a legitimate major company that offers legitimate spraying services. But what they're doing behind the scenes is much, much bigger than just a few orders for crop planes and forest fighting planes. It's a huge operation. And Pine Island Airport is just one of the airports, but that's one that most people can easily check out. And like I said, you can look at it online. You can go to Google Earth. You can see exactly what they're doing there.
It's still interesting that they are being ruthless on everyone. That is the one I cannot understand. Like we talked about, even Washington, D.C., where the president is, or London, where the prime minister of Britain is, or even you go over to Russia, where Vladimir Putin lives, there are chemtrails over these major leaders at the same time. And if it is about a new world order sort of dimension or dynamic that they are trying to create, taking out their own isn't really the smartest thing, is it?
No, you wouldn't think, and that's an angle to consider, and it's one of those things that keeps me very curious and open-minded about it. What is it, and what's it for, and why would they do that? What we've been able to uncover so far, I guess I can share this, is that out of all the places that they do this globally, and they do it just about everywhere, they don't seem to do it over China. That seems to be one of the places they don't do it. And I've noticed that a lot of, and I'm not sure about Japan, but I did notice, somebody pointed out to me, and I don't know if this is related or not, but I noticed that when a lot of Asian travelers come to the U.S., especially like if you go to Los Angeles, you'll see them land, or Vegas, where I am. A lot of these Asian travelers, particularly people who live in those parts of the world, who come over here and are scientists, they're wearing face masks. And I've always noticed it, but I never really thought too much about it. I just thought they were hypochondriacs or worried about the smog. But somebody pointed out to me, why do you think they do that? You think it has something to do with the chemtrails? Maybe they know something we don't. I'm like, I really don't know, but that is a curious aspect, and it kind of dovetails a little bit with our research that there doesn't seem to be any chemtrails, any reports of it coming out of China or Japan. So
that's because in China they can't see the sky. The smog is so thick.
Yeah, that might be one.
and that's being real. I know as Vancouver in the area that has had an increasing large populace of Chinese immigration, even women and men there are wearing the masks during the day, which I find kind of funny because Vancouver's on a high end of a peak and it all slopes into what they call the Fraser Valley. That's where the chemical, all the smog kind of sits. And that's unfortunately where I grew up, before the smog hit. And when I look at it, I see a lot of, I have a buddy of mine who I worked with in Vancouver who now works for an English television station in Beijing. And I asked him one day about the smog there. He goes, it's terrible. He goes, the problem that you have over there is it increases the temperature on a daily basis. So you may have a 30-degree summer day, which is a nice warm day in Celsius, so that would be approximately 85 to 89 degrees Fahrenheit. And with this smog being so thick, it actually jumps that temperature, when you include humidity, up to 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. And it's absolutely horrific. And that's why people are wearing the masks all the time, to at least try and keep some sort of, clean air in their lungs, because those masks that the people are using are absolutely filthy. I mean, imagine your car filter going through something along those lines. So I could see where that's happening there. But, I mean, the fact to spray over top of world leaders who are supposed to be all part of this new world order. And if New York is getting it, that means both the Rothschild and Rockefeller families are getting it. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that is a curious aspect to it. It's one of the things that, keeps the mystery going, that if they're purposely spraying the population with something harmful, they would be exposed to it, and people they care about it would be exposed to it as well. So that's something to keep in mind. You just never know what could be going on with that. But like I said, it is a real program. It is being more and more admitted to, not openly in saying, well, we're spraying the public unwittingly. They're starting to introduce programs that they claim are just beginning, which have been going on for at least 20 years of regular spraying around the world. But they're now claiming they're doing it in the interest of potential weather manipulation or to combat global warming. And I'm just not sold on that at all. I don't buy it for a minute.
You don't have to manipulate the weather. The weather is fine as it is. It's natural. It's supposed to happen that way. There is no need to manipulate the weather.
I agree.
And if you're worried about the ozone and everything, how about get rid of coal? Okay? How about get rid of coal as an energy source for more cleaner energy? It's simple. It's simple mathematics. If 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 × 2 = 4, it's always going to equal 4. Yet for some reason with these idiots who are calling it, these stuff that now we got to play with the weather. We've played with animals. Look at how many invasive species have come over to North America and other parts of the world that have decimated natural habitats. I think in the U.S. there's a huge problem, especially in water streams and rivers and lakes, with snakehead fish, with carp. Okay, those are invasive species from Asia. And when we get all this happening, I mean, let's just stop trying to change things, and let's just figure out how to handle the problem without bringing in more human tampering.
Right. Well, that's assuming that that's what they're really attempting to do, and I'm just not sold on that. At least in relation to the chemtrailing, I think that's just an excuse for what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The Earth it's been around a lot longer than us, and I think that if we were really concerned with pollution, we wouldn't be chemtrailing. You'd think all that money that they're spending on chemtrailing, they'd just stop doing the things they're doing to pollute it, if that were the case. I don't buy any of that, to be honest with you. I don't believe for 1 second that chemtrailing has anything to do with weather manipulation or combating global warming. I think it's something probably more sinister. But what yet? I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. And I know you want facts on that, but in your personal opinion, if somebody came up to you and said, Jamie, what is your personal opinion on chemtrails, what the purpose of it is, what would you say it is?
At this point, what I would probably say, if I wanted to entertain a sinister motive for it, and I had to put some sort of explanation on it, I would probably say what it looks like to me, what it appears to me that they're doing are experimenting at this point. I think probably the levels of the chemicals that they're dispersing at this point aren't so harmful that they're killing us off in mass. We don't. If that were the case, we'd see that. We don't see that. However, there doesn't seem to be any other reasonable explanation or effects of what they're doing on anything good. So, if I had to take all that and collect all that information and surmise what may be going on, I think they're practicing. I think they're perfecting their methods for some sort of future use. I think that they're experimenting and they're conducting tests on the effectiveness of disbursement, How could they step it up later if they wanted to, and with what expediency? Those types of things. I think what they're doing at this time would be an entry level test phase. If you twist my arm and I had to give an explanation, that's my best guess, is that they're not really executing any sort of mass genocide or program per se to an end. I think they're experimenting to figure out patterns, to figure out, the effectiveness of how long a cloud that they create stays in the sky, and all sorts of different things. I think they're in the experimental phase, a very expensive experimental phase, but nonetheless.
Now, you're not a big believer in the Illuminati, but you do think there is something along the lines of a new world order. What's the difference in your opinion?
Well, first of all, the term Illuminati, is ridiculous. There was an Illuminati, and it only lasted for 10 years. And it dispersed hundreds of years ago. It does not exist. So I think the term Illuminati is one of those terms. I have more problem with the semantic of it and using that term. I think because it's misleading, and because I think that a lot of times it creates these really dark corridors of thought where you can almost assign anything that's going on in the world to this title Illuminati. And when you do that, you sort of create this ghost, or this sort of this dark entity that's impenetrable. You can't really identify it, and it's bigger than us, and I don't think it works that way whatsoever. And then you have people who like Jay-Z and entertainers who go out there and try to trivialize that term, and they're familiar with a little bit of the history of the Masons and the Freemasonic ties to the Illuminati, and the symbols and the symbolism and all those different things. And I think they try to use it as a fashion statement. So there becomes this big, phantom of something that hovers over. And in my opinion, while that may have the flavor of what's really going on, I think it serves as a curtain, right, for what's really going on. And that's why I have a problem with it, because I think we need to take the mystery out of this and take the hokiness out of it. I can assure you this, if any remnants of the true Illuminati still existed, they absolutely 100% would not be using the term Illuminati. That, first of all, it was forbidden when they disbanded to ever do that again. So they wouldn't, even within their own organization, they wouldn't use that term. They wouldn't be out there flashing the symbols and usually using it as some sort of bling bling. That's not what that institution or organization would ever do. So when you ask me why does there seem to be this contradiction in my thoughts, it's not really a contradiction. What I'm saying is that we can't take everything that's mysterious and dark and scandalous and sinister and attach it under one umbrella and call it the Illuminati, because the Illuminati in that sense really doesn't exist. Now, are there sinister people and puppet masters and people in control? Yes, those people do exist. And ironically enough, some of the same people that people identify and accredit as being Illuminati are some of the people that we need to be watching. Those are some of the actual faces and names. They got that part right, but they need to stop. In my opinion, if we want to be effective at stopping this, we need to really think about what their real agenda is and what they're using their power and influence for. The tactics that they use, in other words, things like turning us against each other politically, they divide us. and pit one party against another party. And then they introduce trivial matters, little red meat for us to chew over, or the latest news story. So we fight over petty politics when we're not really paying attention to the global picture and what they're really trying to do. Because these are real people. These aren't ghosts. They're not phantoms. They're not some dark, figure behind a curtain that we can't see. So these are real institutions, banking institutions, colleges in some cases, government institutions, real entities that we do still have power over if we learn how to use that and execute it as individuals and free thinkers. So I think that's where we need to start exercising our brain power and stop making this such a mysterious cloak and dagger type thing. Because yes, I do believe that there are puppet masters. There are things going on the world stage that are dark, and that we need to engage. I think we just need to start looking at it in proper terms, in the proper light, and stop trivializing it and making it some sort of dark theater. Because when we do that, we take it out. So we sort of, in my opinion, we trivialize it ourselves. And not only that, but you also leave the door open for somebody to start pointing the finger at you and call you a conspiracy theory, you can point at something like chemtrails and say, listen, I know what a contrail is. This is basic science. I know that something is going on in our atmosphere. I may not be able to offer you a full explanation today, but there is someone out there who's paying for all this stuff that should be able to offer us an explanation. So instead of just putting a layer of mystery over it that even we contribute to, we need to pull that back and start engaging and start looking at what's really going on and how we can combat that type of thing. I don't like the theater of it and using broad terms like Illuminati that sounds spooky, and I don't buy into all that sort of thing.
So who is in this New World Order group that people would recognize? Because anybody who's famous and has money, we always seem to throw their name in on this list. And when somebody comes up with something big, they must be Illuminati. I think of an example over the last 10, 15 years of Mark Zuckerberg, who was just a high school student when he created Facebook. Now he's apparently all New World Order, Bilderberger player, so on and so forth. Is this old school money that is running this? We think about the Rothschilds, we think about the Rockefellers. You could throw the Bushes in there, the Clintons in there, or is this just people that maybe some of us have never heard of?
I like to think about it like this. People, you're right, people a lot of times like to point at the money. And here's the way I look at that. Money is a phantom. It doesn't really exist. We all know that. Money is printed on paper, or it's ones and zeros on a computer. So I'll always say, yeah, the people with money can be part of the process. A lot of times they're puppets, movers and shakers and players in the process, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unwittingly. But more often than not, the key players aren't the people with the money, it's the people that make the money. And when I say make, I'm not referring to make as in earn, I'm talking about make as in printing. People like the Federal Reserve or international bankers, the people that are in charge of the money system, not just the guy driving the Rolls Royce down the street, or the superstar rapper, or the Mark Zuckerbergs. Although I will say that those people do, a lot of them end up being players, sometimes knowingly, again, sometimes unwittingly in the process. And the reason is because it just becomes a league thing. In other words, if you're a big league player and you want to play with other big league players, you kind of join the team. Sometimes wholeheartedly and sometimes reluctantly, sometimes knowingly and sometimes unknowingly. But once you're in a league, you're in a league. And, people are often subject to groupthink. And I think that's one of the tragedies. That's why I keep trying to encourage people to think for themselves. Because we do get sucked into these little, very narrow political funnels where, well, if you're not blue, you got to be red. Are you on the red team or are you on the blue team? And it's like, hold on, I don't want to be on either one of the teams. I can think for myself. But the system likes to create these little dichotomies and push us into a margin. They like to put us into a demographic because it's easy to manage people when they're in demographics. You can sell things to them more easily. You can manipulate their thinking and their behavior more easily. If they know what you're made of, or they can teach you how to think, they know how to control you. And so I don't like to wear labels and those sorts of things. But yes, you talk about Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, he might have been a high school student with a good idea and did good for himself and came up with this great concept of Facebook and whatever. But at the end of the day, once he got to a certain level, he does play ball with the big leaguers and the guys that pull certain strings. He does play ball with them. And unfortunately, I think Zuckerberg has turned sour. I think he's a contributor. Do I think that he's one of the big puppet masters in the world? No. But I will tell you that he uses his social media to their advantage. If they want to manipulate public think in one direction or another, he's offered his social media to be used for that sort of thing. He's also offered his social media to be used as a tool to spy on people, to follow their trends, to sell them things. So, while I do applaud capitalism and people doing well for themselves, I don't think Zuckerberg necessarily has our best interest at hand when it comes to matters like our rights and our privacy and protecting those things. I think that he's a sellout, at least, in its most innocent form. But no, I wouldn't qualify, in my own opinion, Mark Zuckerberg to be a major puppet master in the world. I think that is old school money, and old school that's been around a long, long time, generations upon generations. The people that actually print the money, control the money, and they use that money to buy other players to further whatever agenda they have on the table. So that's the way I see it.
Jamie, we only got about a minute left with you here tonight. 3 hours has shot right by. Thank you so much for coming back on. Give us the latest update on Rebel Planet News and what your target date for launch is.
Well, I wanted to get this open by 4th of July, and right now we're still on target for that. If that changes, that'll be known within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Some things need to fall in line for that to happen, but within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to put out an official launch date. But right now, we're hoping to do it by 4th of July. That's kind of been the goal all along, so hopefully we can still do that.
I hope so, my friend, because that's going to lead to one major Rebel Planet Spaced Out Radio party in Las Vegas, because we got to launch them together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. My friend, rebelplanet.news or rebelplanetnews.com. I got confused. I was listening to Little Brother is Watching in the background as I fire up Mr. Bumblefoot to take us on home. And I know you're a big Bumblefoot fan, and he's a good friend of yours as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely, my friend. Thank you so much for being on SOR. I'm going to get you to hold on. I got to wrap this thing up. As I just mentioned, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, the official music of Spaced Out Radio, playing in your background if you're listening in on the terrestrial radio side. Bumblefoot is the official music of the mighty SOR. Tomorrow night on the program, Derek White Sky Cloud is back. We're going to talk shamanism, healing, how it ties into the paranormal, psychic intuition. It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow. Derek's a real deal, man. He's a good friend of mine as well, and I can vouch for him that he doesn't pull the wool over people's eyes. So we're going to do that tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, right here on SpacedOutRadio.com. Do not forget, you've been asking for swag from Spaced Out Radio. We got it. T-shirts, stickers, posters, all available in the Spaced Out Radio store on our website, spacedoutradio.com. I highly suggest you check it out. And for my American friends, do the translation on the price. Your dollar is worth more. It's about $20.55 for a T-shirt in American funds. Well worth it. Start spreading the word, my friends. Thank you to everyone listening in the chat rooms. And thank you for everyone taking part on Twitter. Do us a favor, my friends. Keep spreading the word. I want to thank Everett Themer, Eric Markham, part of my team from the Encounter Online, Jolene Lammers on the web design, Catherine James, social media, Bob Davis, our great intro voice, our business manager, Kim Gandy, Thomas McGowan in sales. I am your host, Dave Scott. Remember, at SOR, with all of you, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.